let's look at what we'll do if I have a shorter sling or bigger wood. And let's start by girth hitching the sling to the porter wrap. I simply pass the end through the eye of the sling and I have my girth hitch. This time I'll be tying a timber hitch. I start by passing the sling around the tree, and then I'll bring the hardware, in this case the porter wrap, up tight. Again, I'm keeping the throat, which is this, again, the section of the sling between the bite in the timber hitch and the hardware. I want to keep it short. That'll help minimize flopping and make the porter wrap easier to work with. Now, I'll begin by tucking the tail of the sling under the standing part on the tree. Once, twice, thrice, and in fact, I'll want at least 5 tucks here. And if I cannot achieve 5 tucks, either because I don't have a long enough sling or the wood's too big, then I'll need a longer sling. Minimum of 5 tucks. Now, the timber hitch has received a bad name in some cases where it's used improperly. It's very important that we spread the tucks out around the tree. Do not make the mistake of letting those tucks bunch up, because if we do, then each one defeats each other by removing friction from the next. So be sure to spread them out, and if we have a real rough bark or perhaps a root flare, we want to make sure that each one of those 5 tucks is in contact with the tree. Now, with both the timber hitch and the cow hitch that we looked at earlier, we want to stop and think a moment about which direction we're going to be loading the hardware. In this case, if we're going to be loading it up, this is good. If we're going to be loading it down, this is good. If we're going to be loading it against the bite, that'll work as well, and that's also proper. What we want to stay away from is loading away from the bite, because the sling can turn. So take a moment, whether we're using the cow hitch or the timber hitch, think through how we're going to be using it, which direction it's going to be pulled in as we load it, and make sure we're loading it either up or down or against the bite or out away from the tree. Let's look at another little trick. This sling is a little bit long for me to be carrying around and storing. Again, using slip knots, I form a loop and I pass a bite through that loop, and then another bite and another bite, and again, depending on the length of my sling, and then I pass the end through, and that's going to be a lot easier to handle. We refer to this as a daisy chain. When I want to use the sling again, I pull the end out and I simply pull the slip knots out and it's ready to use.